I want to tell you a story from here in Oregon about what resistance actually looks like on the ground. Now, I got into it with some Canadians and Europeans in my comments earlier today who seem to think that because they're not seeing like massive general strikes of millions of people, or they're not seeing like armed resistance against the government, that there is no resistance movement in the US. And I know this is something that I've been repeating all year. It is the small acts of hyperlocal resistance. It's millions of people around the country engaged in being non-compliant with fascism, in resisting fascism right where they're at, right in their own backyard, right in their own neighborhood. That is how we effectively resist fascism. But those stories don't make the news. People never hear about the small acts of ordinary resistance that are being carried out like everywhere. Right? So in response to these people on my social media today, dozens and dozens of them who were like, we're not seeing big sweeping action, so that means nothing's happening. I said, believing that the only resistance that is happening is resistance that reaches your ears is wrong. Throughout history, most resistance actions were things you never heard about when they were actually happening, and likely never heard about them at all. I got a little frustrated earlier today to have demands from people outside the United States saying basically like, if you're not performing resistance in a way that is pleasing to us, then we're assuming that you're doing nothing, rather than asking you, what are you actually engaged in? What does effective resistance on the ground in communities across the United States actually look like? Later, I said some of the most consequential acts of resistance are carried out by ordinary people out of sight of the cameras and unacknowledged by the press. So I'm not a member of the press, but I do want to take a second here and tell you a story of what resistance looks like here in Oregon, carried out by ordinary Americans who never expect praise. They don't expect to be in the limelight. They don't expect that their stories are ever going to be told, but they know that their resistance work really, really matters. So in Oregon and a lot of other states, micro-watch groups function in a number of different ways to protect our neighbors from the American Gestapo, known as ICE. Folks can be rapid responders. They can get trained as legal observers. They can be part of school protection brigades. So this group of volunteers I want to focus on here, they do all kinds of different micro-watch activities, but one of the things that's really helpful is that there are places around Oregon where ICE tends to congregate, like parking lots where they all meet up in the morning and they kind of decide where they're going to go terrorize people. Kind of like a rendezvous point. And some of these locations are well known, and social media influencers will show up and interview ICE and be like, hey, how do you sleep at night, motherfucker? How is it that you go home and explain to your children what you're doing to other families? Which I think is really necessary. ICE should not be comfortable. Anywhere that they are, they should not be comfortable. But also there's folks who aren't influencers, who aren't making content. Nobody hears about what they're doing. They're also there talking to ICE.
What's your back number? Pinche paisa, igual como nosotros. If you're a federal agent, igual de paisa como nosotros, y usted traidor.
Put them on the back foot and keep them there, right? We have a right to question them. We have a right to come up to them and film them in public. Despite what influencers may say, you have a legal right to film ICE agents carrying out their duties in public. So these fail sons, they congregate in these parking lots, and there are residents that are there making sure that they're not going to be successful in snatching immigrants. And in general, just like being up in their business, watching the neighborhoods, right? So like if ICE is congregating at a parking lot and they're going to move from there out into the neighborhoods, they want to show up and ambush people at apartment complexes or at places of work, right? And if there are American citizens who are there like, hey, I'm right here. When you roll out, I'm going to pay attention to where you're going, and you can be damn sure I'm going to be alerting the folks about where you're headed, right? It's a comprehensive community-wide effort that relies on volunteers showing up at 5, 6, 7 a.m. and like driving around for hours, hanging out for hours. Where is it that ICE is going to rendezvous this morning? And then how do we all show up? Just like chat with them. Just like, we hang out. So a couple of days ago, ICE was at one of these rendezvous points, and volunteers are there documenting up in their business, making them as uncomfortable as possible, flustered. And one of these ICE fail sons locked his keys in the car. I wish I had a nickel for every documentation of ICE, like hopping out of their car and forgetting to put it in park, locking their keys in their car, crashing into American citizens, being just like the most inept. Remember, ICE are not trained. They not only do not have training in the like law enforcement operations they're supposed to be carrying out, they don't know how to regulate their own emotions. They are out of control, panicking, and inept all at once. So these motherfuckers lock their keys in the car and they can't figure out how to get it open. So they try and call a tow truck and see if a tow truck will unlock the car for them, right? So that they can then go about their business conducting an ethnic cleansing, abducting immigrants and stuffing them into these god-awful detention centers so that private corporations like Geo Group and CoreCivic can make billions of dollars. Ethnic cleansing, big business in the United States. But as the tow truck is pulling in, before they get to the ICE vehicles, who's there? Who's there keeping tabs on things and intercepting the tow truck? It's volunteers. And they're like, hey, you don't really need to take this call. You don't really need to take this call and unlock the vehicle of an ICE agent, do you? You want to just turn around, go back that way and not help these guys do their job, not help them commit human rights violations? And the tow truck was like, oh yeah, I don't, these are ICE agents? Like, no, I don't want to help them. And they just right on out. That's it. That's the whole story. That's the whole story. That is what effective resistance looks like. American citizens who are willing to get up at the butt crack of dawn and are willing to find out where ICE is rendezvousing. Just hang out, keep tabs, see how they can be disruptive, because guess what? Effective nonviolent resistance is highly disruptive. Nobody's breaking any laws. Everybody is doing everything completely legal because those volunteers were there on a chilly January day. How many people were saved from being abducted by ICE? Real resistance is thankless, it's anonymous, it doesn't make the headlines. Likewise, it's small little acts that we are conducting all over the country. Fascism is going to die by 1,000 paper cuts, y'all. It's going to die by 1,000 million little actions of the American people refusing to comply, refusing to be compliant, refusing to go along with the agenda of the regime. You want armed fucking resistance in the streets because that's some kind of sexy movie fantasy. Real resistance looks like some middle-aged dude volunteer just like intercepting the tow truck on their way into the parking lot and being like, hey, how about you just not unlock their car? The most consequential acts of resistance are carried out by ordinary people, and you will never hear about them. Although honestly, like I kind of want to make a Google Doc or a repository to collect all of these small stories so that people can get an accurate picture of what resistance looks like, of what the American people are doing day in and day out. Because maybe these stories do need amplifying. They're not cinematic. They're not going to make for some kind of Oscar-winning movie. It's not going to make for some sexy headline news, but this is what the important work of resistance actually is. So I don't know, maybe I'll make a form or a document and people can submit their stories, their experiences. Yeah, I don't know, maybe that's a good idea. Actually, the more I think about it, let's collect stories of regular, ordinary, everyday Americans who are learning how to resist fascism, who are giving of themselves on a daily basis to help defend this country, to defend our freedoms, to defend our neighbors. Because that's how we're going to win this. And maybe we all just need a little bit of morale booster. Maybe we all need a little dose of hearing what it is that good people around this country are actually up to. So yeah, okay, let me figure out how to put that document together and how to give people access to it. And I'll try to get that up in the next day or two.